I'm Father D.
And I'm Phil.
And we're the Robe and the Suit. A Christian podcast combining varying perspective and a witty debate on the impact of the Orthodox word on everyday life.
Hey, Father, we are coming off kind of an interesting Sunday, the Sunday of the Ladder.
Divine Ascent.
Yeah, St. John Climacus. Very interesting dude. I've learned more about this later in my life. I don't think I remember it, growing up. And the little bit that I know, and you're going to have to shed some light on this, he's kind of an eccentric, kind of kooky kind of dude out there, all on his own.
Yeah.
Trying to show us the way. It looks like he wrote the playbook, right, on how to get from this dingy place called Earth and this material world,
right,
to ascend to be like Christ and live into the glory of the next place.
Yes.
You want to tell us a little about this? Because this is an interesting dynamic.
Sure. Well, he's known as St. John of the Ladder, St. John Climacus. We don't know a whole lot about him personally. His main legacy is his book. Okay. This book became widely popular, hugely famous for this book, St. John, The Ladder of Divine Ascent.
Really?
That's the title of the book, The Ladder of Divine Ascent. And it's essentially 30 steps towards ascending God. And he writes this in the 6th century, right? So like 580, 590 or so.
So the book came out around later, after that period of time? We're talking...
No, the book comes around before the 600s.
Right?
We're talking long time ago. Right? Before New York Times, right?
Right.
Yeah.
No Wall Street Journal back then.
No Wall Street Journal, right. And he writes it for... Now, this is something very important we got to keep in mind before we go one step further.
Yeah.
He writes this for his monks.
Yes.
Okay, so he's writing this for monks and nuns who have dedicated their life for a monastic lifestyle.
Yeah.
All right?
Yeah, it has to be with what?
For a monastic lifestyle, yeah. So everything that we're going to be reading, everything that we're going to be talking about, we got to keep that in mind, that this was written
for them, right?
For them over 1,000 years ago, almost 2,000 years ago, right? So with a specific audience in mind, a specific lifestyle in mind in the deserts of Mount Sinai.
Yeah, because he was, that's right, Mount Sinai. He was the monk of Mount Sinai, right?
Right, so in a very harsh, rigid, desolate place.
Yeah.
And this book changed really the face of asceticism for centuries, and we're still reading that.
Yeah.
So this particular Sunday, because we're in Lent and because we're kind of coming to the close of Lent and hopefully we're progressing in our, spiritual exercises, it's really hammering home our need for progressing, for taking those next steps.
Sure.
And the ladder is great because it very clearly spells out you go from one rung to the next.
Yeah, it's a playbook.
Right.
It lays it all out. And, it's interesting coming off of this Sunday with this is that we're towards the end of Lent now, like you said. So this is kind of the culmination of all the things we've been talking about, forgiveness, confession, deep prayer, even an element of fasting is involved in this, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Huge part of fasting. So one vivid example, a reminder, if you don't have the book, The Ladder of Divine Ascent is his icon, which is the Ladder of Divine Ascent. And I highly recommend everyone to just Google the Ladder of Divine Ascent. I got it right here in front of us, Phil.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting.
And I got it pulled up on my iPad here. And I'm just curious, Phil, what kinds of things jump out at you? Because this is one of my favorite icons. This was on the walls of my seminary room. From my early days. This was something that inspired me that terrified me.
I can see that.
It's
not your classic icon.
It's not
with a holy person, a holy saint, or one of the apostles, or depicting Christ's life,
right?
The parables,
right?
This is fascinating to me. Now that you point this out,
tell me a couple things that you see,
man. First of all, the ladder, of course, right? And there's a ton of people on the ladder, and they're most of them look like they're hanging in there, and they're on their way up. Now I can see the divinity at the top, and the angel, the angels and the cherubim, whatever, and then down at the bottom you can see the earth, this world that we're in, and there's these folks down at the bottom trying to get on the ladder. But the most fascinating thing is these evil spirits with wings and bows and pitchforks grabbing people and throwing them off the ladder.
This guy's
look at these guys.
This guy's riding him like a bull. Look
Yeah,
at that.
he's riding them off the ladder.
Right.
It's like it's almost like an antagonistic fight, right? And
duel to the death.
They're totally taking them down,
right?
And again, I'm assuming that this is part of the playbook because you've got to go through each rung one by one. This isn't something. In trying to understand it, this wasn't something that happens immediately. You go all the way up.
Right. You take
one step at a time. So you want to tell us a little bit more about this because I've never seen an icon.
Well, let me ask you this: all the way at the bottom here.
Yeah, is that a pit? What is that?
What do you see? What do you see at the bottom?
This individual is falling into something.
Do you know what that is?
It's blue. It's a pit. Is Hades?
Look. Do you see that eye?
Oh, there is an eye in there.
Nose?
There is an eye in there.
It's a face. It's a mouth.
Oh my God! You know what? If I look at it this way,
mouth and the face of hell.
I see it now.
It is hell swallowing a man whole.
Oh wow!
I
see. Got to turn my head a little bit.
Look at that.
Yeah, it's an eye.
Turn it.
There it is. Yeah,
it's a whole head.
Yeah, if you turn it this way.
And he's
in. He's totally in.
It's like the sandworms of Dune.
This is really
swallowing a spice raider.
This is
swallowing
totally
him whole.
This is like the evil empire.
Right. It's like Jabba the Hutt.
Isn't it something? Yeah. No, now that you point that out.
It's
and even up
creepy.
further, they're on top of the evil spirits are conquering each of these individuals. And literally, like they're riding them like a horse. Then the other one is poking them with the spear. The other one is dragging them off.
This guy's getting shot by
an arrow. He's got arrows. Yeah. And the further up you go, the less of them there are.
Okay. Oh, that's an interesting observation, right?
It is a beautiful icon,
right? So these are monks. Okay, right. They're all dressed as monks. This one's dressed as a priest.
As a priest, I was going to ask if that's.
There's a bishop, right? At the very top, in the very upper right corner, is Jesus. And he's receiving them, right? Yeah. Upper left corner are the angels, and they're sort of giving their divine inspiration. Bottom right corner are the monks and the men and women who have not yet even started to ascend the ladder. And this is something curious. That's something interesting that I'm curious about. What does that mean? If they haven't even taken a first step on the ladder, right? What does that mean? Like, have they not even, are they getting ready?
Well,
right? Are they like,
they're on the complete other side.
Right. And it's almost like they're protected by this like little bubble here.
Yeah, and I was just going to point that out. I don't know if they're on the other side of the mountain or if that's a bubble or what that is, but they all are looking upward.
And it looks like they're kind of praying for them. Right, their hands are kind of clasped together.
They're all looking upward, praying. There looks like there's some birds or doves or something, but they're totally focused on what's happening.
Right,
they're clearly taken aback by the ones that are falling off. Yet they see the many that remain.
Right,
and I think the other thing that's interesting is the ones that are on the ladder. They're all praying. You can see their hands.
Yeah,
they're all
praying
in prayer.
Yeah,
which was another element of this. Reading and understanding him. But this is quite the icon, too. I mean, this is a pretty old version of, there's some writing at the top, of course.
Well, and one thought that just jumped out at me is we usually don't associate a prayer life and a spiritual life with dire consequences. That if you fail, it's not that you're just gonna, gonna have to start over, right? But when these guys fail,
Oh, there's no starting over here, Father.
they're getting dropped into the mouth, into the pits of hell itself.
Yeah. This is like party's over.
Right.
you don't have a shot, because each one of these steps, and then as it goes in the reading, as in the book, each one of these steps is symbolic to the way we live our life, and we should get us into that.
Yeah, let's get,
because each step has a meaning.
Let's get into that. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So there's 30 steps, right? So on this ladder there are 30 rungs, and each rung is associated with the years of Christ before he was baptized, right? So Jesus died at the year 33, and he added those years up before he was baptized. And if we recall, Jesus did all of his ministry in only 3 years.
3 years. I remember that.
Which is pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Right? So
I remember that.
30 years before he's baptized, 30 rungs, all right? So now we're gonna switch our attention to the book. So for those of you that have access to Google to maybe getting your hands on this book, check out the icon, get yourselves a copy of the Ladder of Divine Ascent. All right, now we're looking at the table of contents. The first section is the break with the world, okay?
Right.
Renunciation, detachment, and exile. You need to get out of the world, right? Meaning you're a businessman, you're a professional, and you basically say, I'm breaking with the world. I need to climb the mountain and join a monastery. Again, remember, these are monks.
Right. There's a complete new dedication to life.
I'm renouncing the world. I'm renouncing my family, right? Parents, kids, spouses, whatever. You leave everything behind. You go to the monastery, right?
The temptations of the world are left behind.
You break with the world.
And you got to focus on now the other life.
Right. You break with the world. That's the first group. Second section, the practice of the virtues. And it says here, active life. And we go through obedience, penitence, remembrance of death, sorrow. Okay, so there's a lot to go through there. And then
active life. So
the active life.
So now you're engaged in what you're about to do.
Right, because you're in the monastery, you're in with your monastic brothers.
That's right.
First step, obedience, right?
So there's rules.
Hey,
here we
if
go.
You don't listen to the elder.
Yeah.
If you don't listen to the big boss.
Right. So you have to practice this notion of, again, obedience, dedication to the monastic life.
Yeah.
There is ritual. There is process, again, in how you're going to give yourself to this new world.
Right.
But it's this, what I got to tell you here, at least in the beginning, in a corporate environment, as you get into the different stages of your career, there are playbooks, depending on the company you join. There are cultures in a company that you have to follow. There are things you have to do to be part of that corporate environment. It's no different if you're an entrepreneur. You got your own business, right? So there's almost a parallel to some degree.
Okay.
And there's plenty of books written by incredible people on what you should be doing to be successful, or how it plays into your own, what you want to do. So I can see the semblance of order, at least in the beginning, because we always talk about focus. We talk about focus and discipline.
Yeah, and
self-discipline too in a corporate.
And it's funny, don't books often tie their titles to like 7 rules for this, 20 rules for that, 30 rules for that,
That's exactly right.
20
Stephen
steps
Covey's,
for this.
7 Habits of Highly Effective People.
Right.
Everybody's got some kind of, game plan on what the steps are.
Right. Follow these steps.
And you'll get to where you need to be.
Right. So maybe St. John was one of the first.
Sounds like it. Now, he was a little kooky, and we got kooky people too. Simon Sinek and some of these other guys.
He's actually hilarious. When you take time to read through this book, he is, I would say, comedic. In he's very colorful language.
Interesting.
And that's what really captivated his audience. Because he uses real vivid imagery, and it really just grabs your imagination. So I highly recommend. It's not for everyone,
right? And
we can't necessarily apply everything to our lives, but reading it through Lent is a really good exercise. So,
but it does move through these
now.
Sections. You know, as you were talking about there. So then later, you know, we're talking about the mental and the physical passions.
Right. So we start with the fundamental virtues, right? And then we move on to, now we're going to struggle with the passions, right? So now we're
Gluttony.
So now we're moving on to
Lust.
The good ones, right? Anger, malice, slander, talkativeness, falsehood, despondency. Okay? Moving on.
That's
there's
very
a lot.
specific
I know.
with respect to
There's
how you
a
get
lot.
rid of that.
Right.
No wonder they're falling off the ladder.
Right. And these guys, you know, they're not eating much.
No, that was the other piece of this, because of they didn't want this notion of physical health. It was a big part of it. We talk about wellness. Think about in today's world. When we talk about wellness, we talk about dieting, we talk about different fasts, different different methods.
They're eating bare minimum just to keep their bodies alive.
Yeah.
So then we're going on to physical material passions. So that first section I just read was the non-physical passions, right? Those are kind of the passions of the emotional, right? When you're angry, when you feel jealous, right? When you're talking bad about people. And then there's the physical passions. He goes on to gluttony, lust, avarice. Right.
Yeah.
And then more non-physical passions, insensitivity, fear, vainglory, and then the queen or the king of the passions, pride.
Yes,
and this is how he crowns that the worst of all sins, the worst of all of the passions, according to St. John, is vainglory, pride. When we feel proud, when we feel arrogant, when we feel better than others, it doesn't matter how many rungs.
Right.
And this is the danger of the ladder, right? You could have climbed, at this point, 22 steps of the ladder, right? Because now we're on step 23, pride. You could have worked 22 years of your life
just to get to there.
Now
we're on this one.
Now you feel so good about yourself that you climbed all the way up. Look at how good I did.
You know, that's amazing.
You see the danger of the spiritual journey. Look at how much I've accomplished. And just like that, you feel proud, and boom, you're falling into that devil's mouth, into the devil's hole.
Again, I'm going to bring it back to Pat Riley, the great basketball coach in the Miami Heat. And he wrote a book, The Winner Within. It was a life plan for, being a team player.
Right.
But his greatest quote, his biggest conversation in the book was the disease of me. Okay, and it had a lot to do with
disease.
You get to this point where you think it's all about you,
right?
And you're, like you said, you've gotten through the college environment. You're a great ball player. You're going into the pros. You're a great ball player. Here you are. You've amassed all this great glory, and there's not just pride, but now you're like really full of yourself.
Right.
That turns into a disease because it alienates you from a team environment. So you can see how preparing for the monastic life requires this individualness and discipline and shedding these things, so like pride in particular.
Actually, it's really interesting you say that, Phil, because there are two major forms of monasticism. There's the individual monastic life where these guys go off into individual cells or huts in the mountains where they live with maybe one or two other monks, isolated in mountainsides and caves, totally alone, right? hermit dwellers.
That's something.
And then there's the communal dwellers who live in like big, large monasteries surrounded by lots of other monks, right?
The team environment.
But regularly, it's required that all of the monks, occasionally throughout the year and for high feast days and holidays, no matter what kind of monk you are, you have to come together as a team, as a group, as a body. You have to come together and join in the liturgy, join in the celebration of the Eucharist, and essentially rejoin the brothers.
The brotherhood.
Because you can't be that lone wolf.
Right. At the end of the day, right, they as we get towards the back end of this,
Right.
those last rungs,
Right.
there is where simplicity, humility, right? I mean, it ends with it talks about prayer, right? It talks about love as the last one,
Right.
So it is kind of a coming together of sorts in trying to get to where you're preparing yourself now. You really exited, and now you're at the top. You haven't been pulled off like that,
Right.
But it's interesting that the church, right, and our ecclesiastical customs, traditions, norms bring us these type of examples and these type of people, because in this modern day world we have some of them telling us similar things,
Right.
in different approaches, of course, whether it's business or sports or in improving our private lives. I'm thinking about The Alchemist. And,
now we're talking.
Pablo Coelho was talking about when you're thinking about controlling your identity.
Right.
And you think about, having dreams, but then doing exactly what you need to do to achieve that dream, which goes back to this story, this incredible man who, as much as he was, really into it, I mean, he would cry, is what I was reading.
Oh yeah, the tears of joy, the tears of discernment. I mean,
this was his love, even though it wasn't a very happy-go-lucky life,
glamorous life. No,
right?
No, these guys were intense.
It's amazing that these lessons are blowing up right now, blowing up in a sense that they really are hitting the mark with the world we're living in.
Yes,
and how we really need to be aware of not just ourselves first, but then how we bring people along. He was bringing the other monks along.
Right. Well, and not just the monks, but now here we are, and he's bringing us along.
Yeah, right. We're down kind of towards the end of towards the end of Lent.
Well, and to wrap us up, I'm gonna take us to the last rung, which is love. And in St. John's last chapter on love, he says, the Empress, which is love, as if coming from heaven, spoke thus to my soul, saying, my love, you will never be able to know how beautiful I am. You get away from the grossness of the flesh. So let this ladder teach you the spiritual union of the virtues, and I am there on the summit. For as the great man said, a man who knew me well, remaining now are faith, hope, and love. These three, but love is the greatest of them all. 1 Corinthians from St. Paul.
Amazing. That's the
Faith,
final...
Faith, hope, and love, brother.
The final rung.
Love is all.
Get all of it else checked off.
That's it.
You got to love, and you're in.
I mean, the Beatles said it, right? Right? Jesus said it. I mean, you can't go wrong.
You can't go wrong.
Right?
Wow. That was pretty deep. I mean, this was pretty deep. It's interesting to see how, glad we picked this one.
Yes.
Good move. And I think we got some really good ones coming up. But I think this is really cool because we are into Lent. We are into ourselves.
Well into Lent.
Yeah, we're into ourselves.
Almost there.
And we got to have love to finish it off.
That's it. We're gonna climb the top of the mountain.
Big couple of weeks up ahead. Thank you, Father.
Look forward to it.
That was great. I'm looking forward to the next one.
All right, Phil. Have a great week.
You too. Thanks. And that's a wrap for The Robe and the Suit, a Christian podcast combining varying perspective and witty debate on the impact of the Orthodox word on everyday life.
Download and listen wherever you get your latest podcasts.
There's no need for you to dress up. Leave the robe and the suit to us.
And jump in the fray.